Hello everyone, in this video we are starting a new chapter in HTML which is forms. So actually we'll learn how we can create a normal form because it is a very basic element that is present in most of the websites. Uh, that's why we learn this in this lesson. So let's start that. For creating a form we have a container tag which is form, which is just like the table and the other elements which are used to get the items inside that. So we can create all the items inside this which are related to form. So remember, this form tag is very important, and inside that form tag we have some extra attributes we can specify. This attribute is the action attribute, in which we specify the backend URL or the backend server URL, where we want to send our data or our form data. Because basically what we want to do is we want to send the data or get the data from the backend server. So the backend developer will give you the link of the backend server where you have to put the data or where you have to send the data. You will add that in this action attribute. For now we don't have any backend, so we'll not be adding it. But if you will work in a company or in like bigger position, at that time you will be writing this action attribute. Inside that you can specify the URL for the backend server, then all your data of the form will go inside that. So the first thing for creating a form element is this tag, which is the input tag, you can say. This input tag is basically used for creating a field in which user can enter their data or input the data he wants. And also for adding some text about this input or this field, let me just show you what happens now if I just add this input tag only. So it will by default create this box which in which I can write some data, right? So in this I can write some data, and this data takes by default the value or the type of text. We have some different attributes we can specify in this input tag. Inside that we have this type attribute in which I can specify what kind of data I want to from the user. So if I write text here, so user can write any type of text data, which can be number, symbols, or any alphabet. So I can write number, symbols, or anything because I have added input type text here. If I add number here, input type number, so user will only be able to add numbers only. So I cannot write any text. Uh, Numbers are only allowed. So let me just refresh that. So basically it will not allow us to enter this or submit this. We can write it inside that, but will not be able to submit that to the backend. So this is what we do. And then we have the input type password. So input type password is just like the input type text. So it will only hide that thing whatever we'll be writing inside the like inside the field. So basically it will not show whatever you will write. So it is used for entering password or getting the password from the user. Similarly, we have the input type name attribute, and for other types of input we have this mdn doc you can consider. You can go to the form and you can inside that get the idea about this form element or this form tag. So you can see that we have different types of form here. You can see here is a form, and we have different attributes assigned to this. So you can see that Also, we have input elements as well. So if I search for input elements, so the input elements will also be there, and it will show you what are the attributes we can specify in it. So you can see that here we have different types of attributes. We can assign those attributes here. I'll be telling you some of the attributes in the videos, upcoming videos, but I just wanted to show you that where you can get the reference about this input. So this is actually the doc. You can explore about anything in this, like, and then we have the different attributes like name. Name is the attribute we use for whenever we send the data to the backend or anywhere we want. At that time, we actually want the name to be assigned to an input field. Otherwise, the value will be there, but the backend developer will not be able to get the idea uh, for which field this value is for. So we specify a different name for different fields. For example, if I'm entering password here, so I'll be writing password, or let's say user password, or anything I can write. So by this, backend developer will get the idea. Okay, so the value coming for this input field is for the password, right? So it will look like this in the backend, equal, and then whatever the user has entered inside the field, let's say 123 or anything. So this is the format which the developer or the backend developer will get if we submit the form. So basically name is used for getting the data for that particular field. Similarly, we have different attributes like placeholder is there. We can specify placeholder, and inside that I can specify a text, let's say enter a password. So that placeholder will be like a transparent text or a light text inside this field, and if I try to write, that will be gone, right? So this is actually the placeholder attribute. Similarly, we have different attribute like value attribute is there. We can specify the value or the initial value I want, let's say 1234. So this will be the initial value presented inside this form. If I refresh the page, so you can see that the default value is added here, which I have written. So if user doesn't do anything, he will get this value inside the field. Then for showing the input field, we have this label which denotes the text for that field. Enter a strong password, let's say I want. So this will be you can say instruction text for that field, what user has to enter. We can tell that inside a label tag. So you can see that it is added here. Similarly, we can add a BR if I want that to come into the next line. So that will come to the next line. You can see that. So this is how we actually create this input label and the combination of these. By this, we can create one more field like the username, for example. Enter a username, let's say. And in the new username, I can write only the text, and I can change the name, and I can write, let's say, username, or I can give some example username if in this as well if I want. So that will be actually added here. So you can see that, but I need some BR, so I can add BR here, or you can create both of them in a div. That will be a better idea, but we'll talk about styling them later. Okay, one more BR. You can see that. So now we can actually create one submit button as well. For creating a submit button, we have two options. Either we can create button tag and we can specify button type submit, and then we can write any text bit in between the button. For example, send, or let's say login. So that will create a button. Inside that there will be a text called login, and if I click that, so it will send the data to the specified URL. I haven't specified anything. Also, there is one more method attribute here. I can specify if I want to send the data or get the data. So if I'm asking from the server about any data, so I'll be using get attribute value. Otherwise, I can use a post value here. So this is actually the thing. But in this, we'll not be doing that because we don't have any backend server or backend link. So we can just simply write and see what happens if I submit that. So if I click that, so it will do nothing. You can see that it is actually doing nothing. It is just sending the empty data. But there are some, let's say if I add a number here. So if I add a text now, and if I add here something that is password, so you can see this error is coming. Please enter a number, because the data I have entered is a text, not a number. But in some browsers, it will block you to enter text as well. So in Chrome, it will, I think it will do that. But in the Firefox, it will let you write the text, but in before submission, it will give you this error. So I can only write the number here, and if I submit, then that will be submitted. So you can see it is actually sending that to some URL or anything. So by default it is sending to the same URL, but we can specify that, like we can specify any backend server URL if you want to send this data. The other way to create the button is we can remove this button and we can write input type submit if I want to create a submit button. And then there is a value attribute in which I can write the text inside that button or inside that button. I can write login here, so the login will be there on into that button. So the button will be same but with a different approach. So you can see that. And if I change that to something else, let's say if I add, let's say if I add a text, uh, let's say send, so that will be on that text or on that button. So the send will be there. Similarly, we can create a reset button that will actually the reset the data we have added. So let's create that as well. So there are two buttons actually we can create with the input, and then there is input type button as well, but that doesn't do anything. So if I write any number and let's say anything, we can submit by this button. You can see that. But if I write, let's say a number and some password, and if I click on reset, then the fields will be empty because we have click on this reset, and that will make the fields empty. So this is actually how we create a normal or a basic form, but the form elements are not finished with this label and input. There are more form elements like select, radio buttons. We'll talk about that in the later video. For now, this is it. I hope you got something. Thank you for watching. Let's meet in the another one.